All right, welcome back to another episode of the Righteous Ruckus podcast. This is your host, Riley Lowe, and I want to talk today about something that it's foundational, pardon the pun, you will understand that later, but something similar to this. This is a rock, right? This actually happens to be a geode that my wife bought. We didn't find this. It'd be awesome if we found this, but this is actually a geode. It's actually a beautiful rock. But talk about the rock, which is something it's a metaphor and a term that's foundational to the Christian life and Christian worldview. But it's also something I think's worth revisiting from time to time. And I'll kind of give an analogy, sort of application there, as how it compares with the rest of the world. So without further ado, let's get into it.
It's time to get off the church benches and into the trenches. Let's make a righteous ruckus.
Okay, so the rock. I've been to theme parks, right, and seen, actually, like, even if you go to like a restaurant like Rainforest Cafe or something cool like that, you know, my girls, they love going there to Rainforest because they make it look like a rainforest, hence the name in there. But even at theme parks and stuff, you'll notice like these boulders or these walls at the zoo maybe, where it's like, wow, look at these big rocks, look at these cliffs, look at this stuff. And upon further inspection, the reality is, I was at a zoo one time and I saw a construction team building out a scene, and it's basically chicken wire and stucco, right? It's fake rocks, right? There's nothing inside. There's no sustenance to that. They're building a facade, right? From a distance, it looks like a rock, but upon further inspection, it's fake. It's fake rock. Actually, my daughter, oldest daughter, when she was really young, she was really fascinated with shiny things, right? She liked jewels and that sort of thing. And I think it was Christmas or one of her birthdays, I actually got her like just a bag off of Amazon of these jewels, right? They're just pieces of colored plastic that were shaped like a diamond. And, they're still around. This has been years later. And she just loved it. She thought, oh my goodness, look at all these cool shinies. That's what she called them. And she just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I mean, then she's just too innocent, naive, and young to realize that these aren't real, right? This is just pieces of plastic that are shaped like this. But I mean, to her, it was the real deal at the time. But so let's talk about the rock. The rock is mentioned a lot in the Bible. It's actually, I think, over 100 times in the Bible. The term rock is mentioned, whether it's talking about an actual rock or it's using a metaphor to describe a person as a rock. The first time it appears in the Bible, the rock is used it's Exodus 17, 5 and 6. Let's see here. It says, and the Lord said to Moses, this is when they escaped the Egyptians, and then they're starting their journey through the desert, and the people are already complaining, which they did nonstop, and they're in that whole 40 years. But they're saying, hey, we're thirsty, dude. Give us some water. This is ridiculous. You let us out of Egypt, and now we're just going to die of thirst in the desert. Anyway, the Lord said to Moses, go on before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. All right, so you have some witnesses there. Also take in your hand your rod with which you struck the river, which parted the seas, right? And go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So, he couldn't go back and say, oh yeah, look, I dug a hole and found a spring, right? And then go back and say, look, all I did was just tap this rock with a stick, and now we got water here. He took witnesses with him so people could verify basically that God's the one that did this for him. And and that's a really cool deal, because actually, they would have died if they didn't have that water to drink. And so it's actually God provided them, in it's a stretch here, but some living water, just like Jesus is the living water, right? And if you drink of his water, you will not thirst, like he said to the woman at the well. And then let's look here, like in Psalms 18:12, King David writes there that the Lord is his rock, his fortress and deliverer. David uses the term rock to equate the strength and power of God. So there he's saying, look, you can protect me. Think about all like even the old westerns, right? These guys are starting to have a shootout out in the middle of nowhere. What are they doing out in the middle? I don't know what they're doing out in the middle of nowhere, but they're always out in the desert somewhere, and they're hiding behind a rock so they don't get shot, right? That rock is protecting them. That's kind of what his thing is there. And so the term rock is used mostly, though, to infer or refer to God and Jesus Christ. Term rock has also been used to mean the literal rock we have on earth, as in like in Deuteronomy 32:4. Let me find that verse exactly so that I can tell you precisely here. He is the rock; his work is perfect. All his ways are justice, a God of truth, and without injustice, righteous and upright is he. So he is the rock. Basically, he's saying, it's trying to say that God is a rock there. Very strong, very, I don't know what, can't be broken. He's immovable, basically, in that description there. So what does it mean? Well, Paul actually also refers to Jesus Christ as the rock in 1 Corinthians 10, 1-4. And actually in that one, he makes a reference in the Old Testament about their forefathers and how they ate spiritual food and even drank spiritual drinks. Paul says that their forefathers, including Moses and the rest, drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Jesus Christ. Let's read that. This is 1 Corinthians 10, 1-4. Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that all of our fathers were under the cloud. All passed through the sea. All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. All ate the same spiritual food and all ate the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Jesus Christ. Are you saying that rock, Jesus was, this is before Jesus was born? Are you saying that Jesus was around before he was born? Well, yes, Jesus is eternal. Just like, I don't remember which one it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is called Jesus. All right. So anyway, that's what the rock is referring to. And actually the rock is also, God also uses the rock in here where he says, listen to this, where he says, and this is Matthew 16:18, when he talking to Peter there. All right. It says, and I say to you, Peter, this is where he says, who do you say I am? And he says, you're the Christ, and he gave the right response basically to who do you say I am? And Jesus responds and says, and I also say to you, that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. Now, some people, I've read and heard that people are saying that because Peter is, kind of the father of the church, gave one of the first sermons, in Acts there. But I think he's saying this truth, that Jesus is Christ. Jesus is our Savior. Jesus is our Lord. That truth is the foundation, and that's what he's building it on. All right. And that's also one thing that the Bible describes as a rock being a foundation, and Jesus is actually called the cornerstone. And so this is the thing, is you have to have that foundation. If that foundation is not there, then what is your house built on, right? There's that old hymn, on Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. So he's saying if you're not building your life upon the rock, Jesus, then you can actually, and your life is basically worthless and in vain, because all other ground is sinking sand. Hades will prevail against you instead of when you're on the rock, then the gates of Hades shall not prevail. And what you got to remember here too is it's not, how do I describe this? It's not really, so you say, well, Riley, I mean, Christians, yeah, they have this rock as their foundation, but don't Muslims have a foundation for their religion? Don't Hindus have a foundation for their religion? Don't the Sikhs and the Mormons, don't all these religions have a foundation? Well, they might. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, remember how I started this deal off. Are you building your foundation on a rock, or are you building your foundation on stucco and chicken wire that looks like a rock? Okay, so that's what you got to realize. Now, I've heard it said there's a little bit of truth in almost every religion, right? I mean, if a religion's saying, hey, if there's anywhere in a religion that it says, be a good person, I mean, that's definitely a truth. If there's anywhere a religion that says you should pray to God, well, I mean, yeah, you should pray to God. Now, what God you're praying to, that's a whole nother story. What it means to be good, a good person is a whole nother story. Actually Christianity basically says nobody's a good person. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. So, but that is our goal, is to be a good person. That's a process called sanctification. But you have to beware of what your foundation is. Now, I would not argue against somebody that would say, look, this Muslim is praying 5 times a day and abstaining from these things and doing this and that for a religion that they believe to be true, right? And you could put that up against somebody a Christian that has been living a wicked life and has a deathbed confessional. Well, does it seem right in our limited minds that the Muslim that's been living his whole life like that should go to hell, and that the Christian who just had a deathbed confessional and accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior and repented from his sins just then and was genuinely doing so, is it right or fair, in our worldview, that that Christian that got converted on his deathbed gets to go to heaven, and that Muslim that's been living a disciplined and really committed life to Islam would go to hell? Well, you got to consider, what were they doing, right? So it's not the level of your faith or the amount of your faith or the committedness, how committed you are to your faith. That's not what matters. What matters is the object of your faith. What is the object? Yes, the Muslim was very, very, very committed to chicken wire and stucco, right? Whereas the Christian who had the deathbed confessional lived the majority of their life committed to the world, but then there for a short period at the end was committed and put the object of their faith was the solid rock, right? I mean, I've got granite countertops in our kitchen, right? So you go and you look at that and you put your hand on that, that's solid, right? You can just tell by the feel of that, that's solid. And they make these, I don't know, for lack of a better term, I always heard them called Formica, but they make a Formica countertop that looks almost exactly like my granite countertops. But I'll tell you what, there's a difference if you go and you put your hand on that, or if you put a hot pan on that, that's going to burn that Formica countertop, that granite countertop, because it's just solid rock, is going to be able to take that, right? So there's a big difference there. So and it has to do with what it actually is, not what it looks like. You know, you may be able to fool a lot of people into believing that Formica is granite. But at the end of the day, there's only one that truly is granite, right? So you're going to have a lot of people, an awful lot of people, an ever-growing amount of people that will say this God in the Quran is the true God, and that's the rock you should be, and the object you should be putting your faith in. And then you got Christians who are saying, no, our God is who put on human flesh, lived a sinless life, died in your place, was buried in the tomb, rose again, and ascended to heaven. That guy, that's the God that is the true rock, and that's should be the object of your faith. Only one of them can be true. They can't both be true. You can't say, well, yeah, I mean, you can believe that that's true, and I'll believe that this is true. You know, they're mutually exclusive. Only one of them is true. And if you say that you believe, I mean, this is kind of on a rabbit trail here. If you go on a rabbit trail and you say, well, you believe that Islam and Christianity can both be true, and that you're inclusive by doing that, you're actually being exclusive. You are claiming that both the Muslim and the Christian are wrong, and that your way is the only way to believe that's true. So you're making an exclusive religious statement and religious argument there as well, because you're saying that you Muslim, you say that you're the only one that knows what the rock is. You Christian, you're saying you're the only one that knows what the rock is. And you're saying you're both right. So you're claiming that you're the only one that knows what the rock is. See how that? I don't want to get you, as Frank Turk says, intellectual constipation by thinking through that. But that's the thing, is all religions are mutually exclusive. There is no Oprah Winfrey religion that, you know, where all roads lead to the same God. You know, that's kind of what she preaches and what she believes. And it's just not true. And actually, by doing so, she's claiming that she's the only, her view is the only view that's true. But anyway, what the thing is to be sure and evaluate and think and work through and be sure that you are on the rock. And once you know you're on the rock, and that's the object of your faith, and that's the foundation that you're building your life on, then that's great. Now, I mean, here's something that I guess an application that was in my life, right? So I had, growing up, I lived in a little bitty town, and in a neighboring, even smaller town, if you can believe that, was a church that we attended with a gym. That gym was called, they called it The Rock. It's an acronym, stood for Rural Outreach for Christian Kids. All right. And it was actually through some fellowship and through examples in that church. I was in my formative years, so I got a lot of Christian foundation there. And no, I was not a Christian at the time. Now, I think at the time, if you would have asked me if I was a Christian, I would have said, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian." You know, I mean, I do all this stuff. I believe in this stuff, but I didn't really believe. You know, there was never a time where I had a conversion experience, right? There wasn't a salvation experience that had happened up until then. It was actually years later, but that laid the foundation. The foundation was there. Now, I started building a house on there. You know, we can use the Three Little Pigs analogy here. And I had built some worldly stuff on that foundation. That foundation was actually hidden. You know, it was I tried covering up with all sorts of stuff in this world when I was in college and even a short time after college. All right. But it wasn't until I actually went back and uncovered that foundation and said, this rock here, this is what I'm going to build my life on and dedicate my life to being built on that. That's when I actually, things started coming together as far as my Christianity and my worldview. It's been a process, guys. I'm 42. This happened when I was 24, 23, 24. So this has been, over a decade-long process, or 2 decade-long process of me going through this to get where I am now. Back then I thought I knew everything, right? I know so much more now about all sorts of this, about life in general, but about my Christian walk and my Christian faith and everything. And I'm constantly learning more, and that's the whole sanctification process. But you got to have that rock, that foundation to build stuff on. And it's a great thing also to be able to share with your friends, family, coworkers, other people. Once they see that they're trying to build their house, people are looking at you guys. When they're trying to build their house on a shaky foundation, on a bunch of sand. You ever see these houses on these barrier islands that a hurricane comes through and they're just getting washed off in the ocean? Or you see some that are built right on the edge of a river and a flood comes through and it washes that foundation right out from underneath them. Well, the reason why it's getting washed out is because it's dirt and clay or sand. It's not a big piece of granite that's underneath that house. It's soil of some sort, right? So you got to be sure, and when that happens, when somebody else's life, their foundation gets eroded right out from underneath them, the people they're going to look to are the people that they've seen examples of, people that, and I'm not going to say they're going to be like, oh, well, that guy's never had an issue in his whole life, I'm going to go through that. But they're going to see when his house got destroyed back down to the foundation, where was he rebuilding from, right? Where was he rebuilding from? Because I've had my house knocked down plenty of times, guys. And as long as you got that foundation of the rock of Jesus, you can build again. You've got that solid foundation, and that'll give you the courage and the motivation to start building again. So, that's the thing. And you need to, and people are going to see that and see that happen. And people are always watching, and they're going to see that happen. And they're going to come to you whenever their whole world gets destroyed and they're looking at just an empty hole in the ground going, I don't even have a foundation here, man. How do I even start to rebuild? And that's when they're going to come to you and you can say, hey, I'll show you how to build this foundation. This is the foundation you need to use to build your life on. And his name is Jesus Christ. He's the rock. Here's where you need to start building your foundation. So that's what I want to encourage you with there. And so it's good. Now, if you've been a Christian for very long at all, if you sang a hymn in a church, you probably are familiar with the term rock, and the rock is the description of Jesus. So this is going to be nothing new to most people. I just think it's a good idea to hear and see and absorb that and that reassurance, that repetition of hearing that and kind of a reflective thing to be sure, look, I'm not building my life on stucco and chicken wire. I'm not building my life on a plastic thing that looks like a jewel. I have the real thing, right? I have the real thing. And it's good to know that. So I want to close by talking about this verse. It's kind of, it's become the theme verse for this mission, for this podcast, and it's Acts 4:29, where it says, "Now, Lord, consider their threats and enable your servants to speak your word with great boldness."